Chapter 001 Welcome to use our products. Scanning has started, please wait. The scan has been completed. Confirm the citizen ID, SH13313, name, Feng Bu Jue, access equipment, N2055 standard single-player game pod, no abnormal external hardware detected, cardiopulmonary function at normal values, the neural connector is ready, please select the access type. The access type is non-sleep mode. After adjusting during adjustment, please confirm loading the game or return to the parent option. The program starts and loads the game after 10 seconds. After listening to the countdown, Feng Bu Jue quickly entered the world of the game. He was in an environment very similar to an elevator, but there was no floor button next to the door. On the wall on the right-hand side is a 32-inch touchscreen. The entire wall, directly opposite the door, is a complete mirror that can illuminate the player from head to toe. Feng Bu Jue looked at his own image in the mirror, and at this moment he became a three-dimensional CG character with super high pixels. Shirt and trousers, nothing special. The face of the game character is almost the same as his own appearance in reality, less than 1.8 meters, messy hair, and a slightly feminine facial line. With the support of the 4th generation of optical brain technology, players in neural connection games can get a chaotic 5-sense experience, but the game screen is still limited to CG images, and cannot allow players to load into an environment similar to live-action shooting effects. Welcome to the game landing space. Here are all the game items provided by Dream Company. Please choose to log in. The system tone sounded in the ears again, and the optional icons appeared on the touchscreen next to you. There is a total of 1 option, and there is such a landing space to come out. Is this company hinting that there will be many games in the future? Feng Bu Jue thought in his heart, and tapped his finger. The only game item on the screen, Thrillerland. Players must be at least 16 years of age to access this game, and the company does not recommend that users with heart, mental illness, or related medical history contact with this program. The phrase was displayed on the screen, and the system voice reiterated it, and then 3 icons appeared on the screen, one confirm login and the other cancel, and there was a very prominent link next to the option related disclaimer. Is it mentally ill? Feng said to himself, it's better to see. He chose the 3rd one, and immediately a dense text popped up on the screen, and a glance at the scroll bar on the right showed that the disclaimer was extremely long. When ordinary people play games, when they see similar agreements or instructions, 80% are directly turned off, or just glance at it, pull it to the end, and click to agree. But Feng Bu Jue, not an ordinary person, he is 24 years old, a mystery novelist, and his hobby is to shamelessly call himself an artist or a great writer when people ask him about his profession. But these are not the point. Let's talk about his abnormalities first. First of all, his original intention to play this game is to cure the disease. Of course, this disease is definitely not an internet addiction, but a real disease. About 2 months ago, Feng Bu Jue suddenly discovered that he had some kind of abnormality, and it took him about 3 days to finally confirm that he had lost the emotion of fear. No matter how terrifying the sound and picture are, it can't stimulate him. He watches horror movies and horror novels day and night, and tries to use his imagination to cooperate with himself to scare himself, but the result is useless. As if there was some door closed in his head, he clearly knew what the horror elements were, and he fully understood where the scary points in horror movies were, but he just didn't feel afraid. So, he went to a nearby hospital. This is just a matter of not going, and as soon as I go, I found out that there was a big problem. Magnetic resonance showed a vague shadow in his brain, near the amygdala, which did not rule out the possibility of a tumor. Later, Feng Bu Jue went to 3 or 4 of the country's top hospitals, but none of them could be diagnosed, and the treatment methods proposed were varied. After doing countless tests and consultations with famous doctors, Feng Bu Jue basically understood this disease. It is estimated that it will go down in history. As a patient, there are 2 things to consider. First, which doctor should the naming right of this disease be handed over, and second, whether to donate the brain to medical experiments after death can also be regarded as making some contributions to the field of science. 2 months have passed, and the shadow in the brain has not changed, has not deteriorated, nor has it shrunk or disappeared, and other aspects of the body are completely normal, even healthy. After thinking about it, he simply refused the treatment and was discharged directly from the hospital. Since the loss of fear is the only symptom, and no one can say whether he will die, or how long it will take, let it be fatalistic. One day, Feng accidentally saw the closed beta advertisement of Thrillerland, and the advertising slogan at that time was "Break through the traditional game mode, let you put yourself in despair, shock, shadowy horror, and feel an unprecedented game experience." He then checked the game's premise, watched a well-made promo that claimed to have scared children, and noticed the link to buy a new game pod and give away a beta account. Therefore, although it seems strange, the purpose of Feng Bu Jue entering this game is not only to play, but also to be scared. He is also a dead horse as a living horse doctor's mentality. Perhaps in this immersive baptism of terror, he can stimulate himself to find the feeling of fear. Of course, just having this strange mental abnormality can only mean that Feng Bu Jue is a patient. He is not ordinary, not just because of his brain tumor. Because before he got this disease, he was different, and he was strange in the dialect of a certain place. There are many strange things about unconscious, although not to the extent of obsessive-compulsive disorder, but most of them are very puzzling. Here is the first one. Reading addiction. His desire to read is difficult for ordinary people to understand. For example, he will read the words on the shampoo box. Another example is the manual of household appliances. He can see the end from the beginning verbatim. What's even more amazing is that he doesn't let go of the labels cut off from his new clothes. As long as something or person has an interest in it, he will instinctively collect all the information related to it. He is not just reading it at random, he also has amazing reading and memory ability, although it is not as good as the level of the ancient Shang Song, who does not forget and memorize backwards, but as long as it is something he has seen, even after a long time, he remember at least 60%. Well, it's about the same as the protocol of other games. It took Feng Bu Jue 2 minutes to read the words of the clause. The only thing that is more special are the ones in the 6th paragraph. He lowered his head slightly, supported the elbow of his right hand with his left hand, put the index and middle fingers of his right hand on his forehead, and then gently slid down the bridge of his nose, which is his habitual action when thinking. That is to say, the player died of a heart attack or was induced by mental illness, and it has nothing to do with their company. He said as if summarizing. Feng Bu Jue felt that it could not be ruled out that this clause was deliberately made by Dream Company. He had seen the game setting on the official website before, and the biggest selling point of this game was the concept of shock value. Through the function of the light brain and the game capsule, to achieve real-time monitoring of the player's heartbeat, pulse, blood pressure, brain nerve response, etc., so as to measure the degree of fear. If the player's scare value in the game instantly exceeds the critical point, they will be forcibly disconnected and immediately taken offline. If the player's physical condition is seriously abnormal, such as cardiac arrest, suffocation, etc., after going offline, the game cabin will notify the ambulance as soon as possible. Anyway, all neural connection networks are connected to the police and emergency departments, and according to this design, the possibility of frightening people should not be large. Click Continue, and you hear the system prompt again. You are logging into the game for the first time. Please enter the nickname used in the game. An input area appears on the screen, with restrictions written next to it, such as a nickname of more than 4 bytes and no profanity or sensitive words. In the light brain era, such restrictions are more thorough. The intelligence and computing power of the system are so high that it only needs a harmonious thesaurus, or even a general category, to exert its reasoning ability on its own and limit any marginal behavior. For example, the name of Boebola stem deep, or what symbol to put after FUC, and add AK. These anti-harmonious means are useless for the 4th generation of light brain. There have been fears more than a decade ago that such computer AI could in turn attack and enslave humans, but so far, there is no reliable factual basis to support this claim. In short, the intelligence of the light brain is very strong, and to what extent the document will be added later after the test, the nickname Crazy Unconscious can be used. Please confirm. Feng Bu Jue's real name is very cold and should be able to be used, but he substitutes seal with crazy. Firstly, he does not want to use his real name directly, and secondly, he also has some self-deprecating meaning. After clicking to confirm, the system voice said, "Next, there will be a beginner tutorial, which is limited to 1 completion. The script is randomly generated, and the corresponding initial reward will be obtained after completion. Note that the results of the beginner's tutorial do not affect the initial attributes of your character, only the rewards are different. If you interrupt the tutorial due to high scare value, active disconnection, leaving the game cabin, etc., you will not be able to continue the original script the next time you enter the game. and a new tutorial will be generated for you. After listening to the prompt, Feng Bu Jue reached out and pressed the confirmation option, who knew that his finger had just touched the icon on the touch screen, and the entire elevator room suddenly became pitch black. The next second, a voice sounded, very different from the mechanized system voice just now, speaking like an old hag. "Welcome to Thrillerland." As soon as the words fell, the elevator suddenly shook without warning. Then, the black box, with 5 fingers out of sight, moved and slowly sank downward. Welcome the majority of book lovers to come and read. The latest, fastest, most popular serialized works are all original. Chapter 002. The change in the seconds just now can be regarded as this game to say hello to the player at the beginning of the beginner's tutorial. Normal people will be startled when the surrounding environment suddenly turns black without warning, followed by hearing the creepy voice. The heart must have been stunned. At this time, the elevator further down suddenly sank, although only a short moment of falling feeling, but also enough to make people's hearts beat faster, startled. But he was unconscious, calm and relaxed, and did not respond after the elevator shook. It began to move down at a normal speed. At this time, the game menu automatically appeared in front of his eyes. The game menu only appears in the player's vision, it cannot illuminate the surrounding environment, and the behavior of reading the menu is private. Even if there is another player standing next to the menu, the other person does not know whether you are looking at the options or in a daze. At the moment, there is no system voice, but I see a text prompt in the menu. You can open this menu at any time, and your character attributes, status, equipment, items, etc. can be queried here. Feng unconsciously saw that most of the menu was covered with shadows at this time, until the line disappeared, and an area in the upper left corner of the menu became lighter, where 3 rectangular, blood bar-like figures appeared. An arrow emerged, pointing to the first one, which was a green energy tank in a full state. A new caption appears. This is your survival value, shown as a percentage, not visible. When the survivorship value is 0, your character is considered dead. Current survival value, 100, abnormal status, none. The arrow moves to the second energy tank, also green, but instead of a percentage, it shows a number. This is your fitness value, which is visible. Behaviors such as running, walking for long periods of time, carrying heavy objects, fighting, and using skills will all reduce this value. It can be recovered by rest or items. Current fitness value, 100,100. The third energy slot is empty, and this is the one that Feng Bu Jue needs the most attention to. This is your scare value, displayed as a percentage, no specific value. If the scare value is higher than 100 and exceeds 3 seconds, your connection to the game will be forcibly disconnected and your character will be considered dead. Current scare value, 0, because I had read the basic settings on the internet before, I couldn't help but read them at a glance. I thought that the other areas in the menu would be unlocked next, but the menu closed automatically after about 10 seconds. He took the initiative to call out the menu again, and the place where it was shadowed just now remained unchanged. Obviously, this beginner's tutorial is by no means just looking at the text and familiar interface in a dark elevator, otherwise the system will not give the assumption that the shock value is too high to interrupt the tutorial before entering. Sure enough, the elevator quickly stopped, and the darkness around him was still there, and he could only hear his own breathing. Suddenly, the light came on for a second, just a second, and then immediately returned to darkness. In this second, the unconscious retina left a scene that was enough to make people jump and scream. You should remember that one of the walls of this elevator is a mirror, and the second when the light was restored just now, Feng unconsciously saw 2 figures reflected in the mirror. One was obviously himself, and although the other only glanced at it, he was basically sure that it was an upright creature, covered in blood. It's just that it's always dark, so that people deliberately look at it, it's better not to look. Someone else, who had already shouted just now, was now either retreating backwards to the corner of the elevator, or frantically punching or kicking the position where the blood shadow in his memory was standing. Feng Bu Jue stood in place expressionlessly, and said to himself, well, since it is a tutorial, it is unlikely to put the player into a mortal situation at the beginning. At most it will lose some survival points or scare me again, and then there should be some changes to keep the game going. Thinking of this, there was really a ray of light shining into the elevator and soon expanding. It turned out that the elevator door opened on its own, and there was a putrefactive and musty smell. There was a green carpet on the floor, and there was not a single window or door on either side of the corridor. except for a dimly lit sconceal lamp at intervals. Outside is a straight corridor, the ceiling is wooden, and the walls on both sides are pasted with wallpaper, and the pattern on the wallpaper is quite strange, like human eyes. The corridor seems to be very long, and the wall lamps look like yellow light the size of rice grains in the distance, which can be seen at a distance of less than 20 meters, and further away they are shrouded in shadow, which can only be seen by moving forward. Normal people probably didn't wait for the elevator door to fully open, so they rushed out sideways and ran away. Feng is not aware, but not in a hurry. For him, this secluded road in front of him may not be safer than this elevator. Since it was not dark now, he wanted to turn his head to see what the shadow around him was. As a result, as soon as Feng Bu Jue turned around, he saw a blood claw with 10 fingers like a hook coming towards his face. He shrunk his neck, could not be avoided, half-squatted, rushed out of the elevator, looked back again, and finally saw the full picture of this shadow. It was a skinless blood corpse, similar to the human muscle model in the health room, but this one was alive, and the whole body was still bleeding. The door of the elevator was slowly closing, the blood corpse tilted its head and grinned, as if smiling. Its eyes were glued to Feng Bu Jue, and when the door was about to close, it reached out a hand and squeezed out from inside. According to the general idea, here I should escape, Feng Bu Jue thought, but this guy doesn't look like a super strong. Do you want to try fighting? At this time, the blood corpse just walked out of the elevator, immediately roared imposingly, waved his hand and hammered towards one wall of the corridor, and the thick wooden board behind the wallpaper was instantly shattered, and the tide flowed out of it about a sack of cockroaches. Count you ruthless. Feng Bu Jue turned around and ran when he saw this scene. Since it is a beginner's tutorial, it is natural to guide the player to continue, and killing the player is not the primary purpose. This action of the blood corpse is actually a waste of time, obviously to let the fleeing player escape more distance. However, the system has also considered other possibilities, such as the player is paralyzed on the ground in fear, or a player trying to fight with it in a place where there is light after seeing the appearance of the blood corpse. In that case, the action of the blood corpse can make the frightened people crawl up and run for their lives, and discourage the hardliners' desire to fight. Of course, if the player is too scared to stand up, or has to play with their lives, then I am afraid that they will have to govern and regenerate a random beginner's tutorial script. First of all, I can't break the wall 80%, secondly, there is no way out if I break it, and third, fighting with this monster will be dead. Very good. Feng Bu Jue silently sorted out the confirmed situation in his heart. It seems that in this novice tutorial, he does not have many choices. After passing a considerable distance, Feng Lanju saw the end of the corridor, where there was a door, a wooden door that looked very thick. As soon as he turned the door handle, he actually opened it, and he didn't have time to think about whether there was danger on the other side of the door, so he could only go in, because the blood corpse was chasing very close, and he couldn't delay. At this moment, Feng Bu Jue understood that he should run as soon as the elevator door opened just now. That was the usual choice, and staying for a moment made his current time for action very urgent. When he entered the house and closed the door, he found that there was actually an iron bar on the back of the door that was used to bolt the door. Feng Bu Jue did not hesitate to latch the door, and almost at the same time, the thing outside began to bang on the door. Feng Bu Jue didn't care about it, turned around and began to look around at the surrounding environment. It was a square room of about 16 square meters, with nothing in it, only a wall lamp, 2 doors, one of which was being struck by a bloody corpse, and the other in the middle of the wall opposite the room. He came to the only door he could escape, pulled the handle, and found it locked. Trying to kick the door lock seems to be a little useful, but the strength of his foot is obviously not enough, and it is estimated that he will have to try hard a few more times to have an effect. The next second, the game menu suddenly pops up in front of you, and another shadowed area in the menu is unlocked, showing a number, but at this moment it is 0. This is your skill value. The specific value is visible. Skill points can be used as currency and accumulated according to the character's actions, and any action that increases the efficiency of the game will reward skill points. Current skill value, 0 inch at this time. The hint of the skill value is a hint that there is some kind of optional shortcut. Feng Bu Jue then looked at his own shock value in the menu, by the way, or 0, and did not move at all. He sighed and looked back at the door that was being slammed. The iron bar had been slightly deformed, and it seemed that it would not last long. Under the pressure that this monster would rush into the door at any time to kill, it was impossible for onlookers to be as calm as him. Feng Bu Jue looked at the room carefully again, this seemingly empty room. Sure enough, there was a hint, at the height of a wall. There was a wallpaper turned down a corner. It didn't look obvious, but careful observation would not be missed. When Feng Bu Jue stood on tiptoe, he reached out just enough to catch that corner. He tore off the wallpaper, and sure enough, on the wooden board behind it, a symbol was drawn in blood, and the symbol looked like a circle, connected to the shape of a BU character, which should be a key pattern. At this time, a roar accompanied by the sound of wood being shattered sounded from behind. And Feng looked back and found that one of the claws of the blood corpse had pierced the door panel, reaching in through a bowl-sized opening and waving indiscriminately, and I don't know if its intelligence set would lift it after touching the latch. The occurrence of this scene undoubtedly indicates that the blood corpse is about to rush in, whether it is solving a puzzle or kicking the door. There is not much time. Feng Bu Jue quickly slammed his elbow on the wooden board with the symbol painted on it, and almost a real pain came, but the wooden board was obviously more brittle and was broken by an elbow. He thought there would be a lot of bugs gushing out, but it didn't, just dust. Behind that plank, there was a small space, in which lay a key. When you pick up the key, the game menu reappears and another shadow is unlocked. You get an item that you can only hold in your hand or discard because the bag and equipment slots are not yet open. He then sees the item's attributes in the new menu display area. Name, rusty iron key type, consumable quality, normal function, open the door lock. Can you bring out the script? No note, I think you know what to do. Feng Bu Jue felt that the remarks column of this item was full of malice, but he didn't have time to think about it, and after glancing at the item's attributes, he closed the menu and ran to the locked door. When the door is opened, the key disappears, and at the same time, a long-lost system prompt sounds. You get skill points, 30 points. This prompt is only once. You can check the change of skill value in the game menu in the future. What could not be used for the time being, he did not have time to care, and he continued to move forward. Behind the door is a stone step that goes up, flanked by stone walls, with no ceiling, and a view of the night sky, illuminated by the moonlight. But he could not escape from the top because the stone walls were extremely high, smooth and more than 2 meters apart, apparently to prevent him from climbing up. Picking up the stairs and running a distance, Feng Bu Jue took the time to take a look at his physical fitness value in the process, and found that it had dropped to 24,100. He tacitly calculated that after leaving the elevator, he ran hundreds of meters, then kicked the door, smashed the wall, and now climbed the hill. These behaviors had actually cost 3/4 of his physical energy, which was much faster than he expected. And the survival value has also become 98, and it seems that the elbow hit the wall just now was judged by the system to cause damage. The blood corpse behind broke through the door about 5 seconds after Feng unaware opened the lock, followed by chasing and killing. It began to emit a vicious laugh. The sound was like ringing in the ears, extremely penetrating. But Feng Bu Jue did not feel this level of interference at all. At the end of the steps, there is a hillside. A giant sword is inserted on the slope. Under the moonlight, the blade reflects the cold glow. When the unconscious line of sight touches the sword, the blood corpse seems to have a sense. Its speed increases wildly, and the distance that was originally tens of meters apart was instantly shortened. Feng Bu Jue really climbed this time. He didn't want to be killed at this moment when he saw that he was about to finish. Stumbling to the sword, holding the handle in both hands, he surprisingly picked up the weapon easily. It turned out to be not as heavy as it looked. As soon as he turned around, the blood corpse had already been killed to the front, and the harsh wail pierced his eardrums, and a pair of blood claws rushed towards him. Welcome the majority of book lovers to come and read. The latest, fastest, most popular serialized works are all original. Chapter 003. Because he didn't feel afraid at all. He was still calm and abnormal in this situation. His reactions and movements were not affected in the slightest, and he tilted his upper body back to avoid the claws of the blood corpse while sweeping the sword horizontally. Feng Bu Jue was surprised to find that this sword tore through the body of the blood corpse as easily as cutting tofu. After the muscles and bones on the monster's chest were cut, blood shot out, splashing Feng Bu Jue's face. A fishy and salty smell in the mouth and nose, and a sticky and warm touch. This game can be described as fake and real in this regard. The blood corpse was just cut by the sword, and it let out a roar of pain, and the body started from the wound, and quickly turned into pus like melting meat, and it flowed like this. Only then did Feng Bu Jue have the opportunity to look at the attributes of the sword in his hand. Name, blood corpse, must die type, weapon quality, excellent attack, strong attribute, none special effects, dissolve blood corpses when attacking them. Can you bring out the script? No. Note, this sword is an early work of the legendary dwarven craftsman Orus Must Die, which was purchased by a cunning goblin merchant for more with a few bottles of a drink known as Two-Pot Head, and half a month later, or made Goblins Must Die. After looking at the attributes of this equipment for a few seconds, the system prompt sounded. You have completed the beginner's tutorial, and it will be automatically teleported after 60 seconds. At this point, another area in the game menu in front of you is unlocked, where a 60-second countdown is underway, and an option is Teleport Now. Feng Bu Jue chose to teleport immediately, and his body turned into white light and left the script in an instant. From its subjective point of view, just the white light in front of him appeared, and he returned to the elevator. The giant sword in his hand was no longer there, and the bloodstains on his body were all gone. Everything in the elevator was as usual. It was still the same as when the game was first loaded. The lights were bright, and he was naturally the only one in the mirror, and what he experienced in the past 10 minutes was like a short, illusory nightmare. The script is complete and the reward is being settled. XP, 70, coins, 700. Get item equipment, none. Complete acceptance task, 00 special, hidden missions completed, 0, cracked worldview, none. Scare surge, 0, maximum scare value, 0, average startle value, 0. Your fear rating is guts. Get an extra reward, choose it later. Gain skill value, 30. Skill value bonus experience, 30. Game currency, 300. Script clearance reward, newbie bag 1. Billing is complete, please continue. This information is displayed on the screen on the wall, and the system prompts you to say that you have reached level 2, and the maximum health value has increased, which is currently 200200. At the same time, Feng unconsciously saw that the specialization column in the menu was unlocked. There were a total of 6 specializations, but the names of 5 of them were covered with shadows, and the level was displayed next to it, NA. Only the generic one was lit and displayed the specialization level F. Specialization is the most important setting of the player's strength in Thriller Park, and Feng Bu Jue, who has read the game description, naturally remembers very well, and the level meaning of NA is none, no knowledge, cannot use the skills of the department. And F is very poor, close to nothing. When you reach this level, you can use the skill of the system, and the success rate is 20. At the same time as the reward was displayed, the elevator door opened again. This time outside the door was not a corridor, but a square room with 4 metal walls, about 5 times larger than this elevator. The light shone from the ceiling, and there were 2 cylindrical hollow glass columns in the middle of the room, which were empty at the moment. Feng Bu Jue had nothing to say about his fright value, and when the fear was quantified as a fright value, he actually saw 3 zeros. As for that fear rating, it doesn't mean much to Feng Bu Jue. According to the game description, there are 5 kinds of evaluations that will be made according to the shock value after the script ends, namely, full of guts, praiseworthy courage, panic, trembling, and soulless. It is absolutely impossible to have a situation where all are 0 like Feng Bu Jue, otherwise the designer will definitely add a level called bold. For the beginner tutorial, the completion of this time is actually the best result in theory, because survival and fitness points have nothing to do with the score, and there is no difference in rewards between unharmed and dying. In the unconscious reward settlement, there is no one that can be better. But he didn't show much joy, just sighed and walked to the glass pillar on the left-hand side, and new options immediately appeared in front of him. Please select the type of bag. On the virtual menu projection, 2 types of backpacks appeared. One with the style of slung diagonally on the shoulder and close to the back, and the other type with the waist and crotch. He thought for a few seconds and chose the first one. Then, the backpack was formed by white light and appeared in the glass column. When the white light turned from blur to reality, half of the glass column turned sideways and opened, and Feng Bu Jue reached out and took out this backpack. At the same time, the bags and equipment slots in his menu are finally unlocked. Your bag is a storage space with a current maximum capacity of 10 items, which can be stored as long as it fits into your backpack. Some items may be living and can only be bagged when the player gains control. Special note: players cannot enter the bag, please do not try. You can check the equipment you have on you, and anything you can install is considered equipment, regardless of the part and amount of equipment. For example, you can hold a knife in your left hand and a club in your right hand, while carrying a finger tiger in both hands. Your costume is not part of the equipment and is tied to the avatar and cannot be removed or destroyed. You can only change your costume settings in the landing space, and clothing can be purchased on exchanges. Although the exchange is prompted here, in fact, at present, it is not possible to buy paid props, and closed beta players can only wear default costumes to play the game. Nowadays, many game companies are in a hurry. At the time of testing, the game development degree is only about 70, but the mall has been listed, what charging props, clothing, skins, big red and blue, etc. These can't wait to start selling, and some industry tumors directly let the company insiders go to third-party websites to sell a variety of excellent equipment or rarities. But this dream company strategy is different. Their marketing strategy in the closed beta phase was completely focused on the sales of hardware facilities. The completion of this game was more than 95 at the beginning of the closed beta, and in the era of technology led by the fourth generation of Light Brain, there was no need for players to test any bugs, just use AI calculus. Therefore, the internal test is mainly to sell the new game cabin N2055 dedicated to Thrillerland. For the trading of virtual items and currency, Dream Company strictly prohibits it. Not only does not open the official website mall, but also be making it very troublesome for players to want to trade. This is a performance of competence to close to arrogance, and the top management of Dream Company seems to have decided that as long as the game is open and officially operated, it will be successful. The closed beta stage only needs to expand the user base and establish word of mouth. Please select your additional rewards. 1. Randomly draw a piece of equipment corresponding to the level. 2. 2,000 points of coins. 3. 80 points of experience coming to another glass pillar. This option pops up in front of you. Feng Bu Jue said, "Today's first day of closed beta, game currency is definitely useless in a short period of time. Experience points." He glanced at the menu. At the moment he was level 2, and the upgrade experience showed 0-200. So this third reward should be 40 of the current level experience limit. Now the level is still low. It is not cost effective to choose this, so he chose the equipment. When selected, a white light lit up in the glass column, followed by the appearance of a stone. Feng Bu Jue was stunned for a moment, and the first reaction in his mind was to suspect what kind of prop this was, a philosopher's stone, so he picked it up and looked at the attributes. Name, stone type, weapon quality, garbage attack, weak attribute, none special effects, none note, irregularly shaped stones that can be found everywhere. Although they can be freely brought out or brought into any script, people always throw them when they run out. In the empty room, an unconscious cry echoed, "What about the pit, Daddy? This is..." Well, this is welcome the majority of book lovers to come and read. The latest, fastest, most popular serialized works are all original.
Welcome to Storyverse. If you have any novels you'd like to see or stories you'd like to share, feel free to leave us a comment or send us a private message. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join our community of avid readers and romance enthusiasts.
Chapter 004, Disconnect the nerve connection, unlock the game cabin, sit up from it, and gasp. It was noon and the sun was shining outside. Feng, unaware of living in an apartment building, the top floor of the 13th floor, the kind that has to pay rent, living alone. His parents learned that they had no appearance in this book, so they took the bento in anger and died a few years ago, leaving a lonely protagonist, and saving me the trouble of making up 2 more names. It can really be said that the book returned to the West, hiding merit and fame. Looking at the time, Feng Bu Jue found that he had only been playing for 15 minutes just now. In the non-sleep mode, the perception of time and the reality experience in the game are 2-to-1, that is, he was in the game for half an hour just now. In sleep mode, the depth of the neural connection is different, and the time ratio can reach the level of 10-to-1, which is the so-called no time in the dream. If the player insists on not going offline, sleep can complete 80 hours of game content. Of course, this is equivalent to dreaming for 8 hours in one night, and you will definitely have a headache the next day. The instruction manual of the game pod states that it is not recommended for players to play games for more than 4 hours in sleep mode. Which is obviously read and remembered at this time. Feng Bu Jue came out of the game cabin, not because he needed to rest, but because he and a friend agreed to play the game together. Today is the first day of the closed beta, and the service started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the person happened to be unavailable during the day today. So Feng didn't want to wait for him. Just now, he was just online to familiarize himself with the game, and did not want to train the level too high, causing the game process of the two to be disjointed. Speaking of which, in this big daylight, there is nothing to do if you don't feel it. Yes, he has nothing to do. Before it was said that he was a mystery novelist. Now some people must think that this kid should not be the kind of big writer who can write nothing without worrying about food and clothing. Obviously, it's not. Feng Bu Jue is famous, but by no means a household name. His books are good, everyone can be published, and the publishing house is willing to cooperate with him. He belongs to the kind of novelist who does not make much money, but does not starve to death. He occupies a 2-page column in a weekly magazine, serializes a detective story, submits the manuscript once a month, has to hand over all the serialized content needed for the next month. And if the quality is not good, it will be returned, and it must be changed by the end of the month at the latest, and the manuscript fee for this work is settled on a monthly basis. But with this income alone, in the city of S-City, he can only make ends meet. So he is also writing a long series of detective novels, which are the kind of physical books that are printed and sold, and every time he writes such a book, he can only make some money and save it, which is a bit of a surplus. But why would he have nothing to do in the daylight? This is also very easy to explain, using Feng Bu Jue's own words to describe his writing and life situation, that is, full of inspiration, on-time delivery, mountain and sea delicacies and hot cakes. Literary thinking is exhausted, it is difficult to write, and a bowl of clear soup boils noodles. Obviously, lately he's been unable to write. This person is very casual, can't write, hard squeeze is not interesting, so he plays not only play, but also claims that this is collecting materials. So, basically, it's a myth to expect that Feng Bu Jue will deliver the manuscript on time. Every month comes to the middle of the month, but I see the editor of the magazine, carrying a single knife, walking thousands of miles and riding alone, and killing the door. And his landlord aunt, with a phoenix wing and gold hammer in one hand, took the spare key, pushed the door and entered, and cut when he entered the door. Every day that Feng Bu Jue comes, he is usually prepared in advance, waiting for the day, immediately crossing the army, cutting gold and drums, only waiting for the two to kill, fighting with them for 300 rounds, fighting in the dark, the wind and clouds change color, and finally left 8 big characters in the sky, no money, a scrapped manuscript. Well, not so exaggerated, anyway, his state of existence is so pleasant. Let's talk about the friend who is not aware of it. According to the fact that things are gathered in groups, people are divided in groups, and the friend who is not aware of it can still be rich and handsome. That's right. This person's surname is Wang, the name size, Feng Bu Jue's child, in the dialect of S-City, that is called Red Trouser Brothers. Since kindergarten, they have been classmates, until they graduated from high school. Wang Xiji was admitted to medical school, and Feng Bu Jue became a social idler. How ironclad the relationship between these two people is can be illustrated by facts and assumptions. First of all, let's talk about the facts. Why Wang Xiji went to medical school was because Feng Bu Jue had aspired to be Sherlock Holmes since he was a child, and Holmes' assistant Watson was an old military doctor. So he went. Let's say that if Wang Xiji is a woman, then the nature of my novel changes, because Miss Wang may have lost her body for many years. In view of the assumptions just now, and the cranky thoughts that are now in your heads, I have one more word to say here. Rest assured, that is only an assumption. They are all men, and they are all heterosexual. Wang Xi is very rich in his family. It doesn't matter how much he has, anyway, he can live a good life without working at all in this life. He also looks slightly handsome, a little taller than Feng Bu Jue, exactly 1 meter 8, gentle, kind, slightly cowardly, does not like to show off, is modest and tolerant. In short, it is difficult to single out the person who is faulty, which is in sharp contrast to the strange coffee of Feng Bu Jue. Wang Xiji can be described as a good young man who is exaggerated by everyone, but the evaluation that Feng does not feel is often cynical, moody, and literate and gangster. But things in the world are so amazing, such two people can become buddies. The afternoon passed in a hurry, and it took another hour to go to the official website to review some information, because I had entered the game and completed the beginner's tutorial, and now looking at the instructions, many places are clearer. He spent his time making noodles, because he saved the money to buy instant noodles and used it to buy flour. This is a weird man. He actually calculates his food consumption, accurate to each meal. and comes up with a specific number of how much food is needed so that he will not starve to death. And then uses all the savings in the bank to buy a game cabin, and the rest of the money is used to buy flour, pay utility bills, and so on. You say he's calculating, and he would spend a fortune close to his limit to buy a luxury new game pod that is very expensive. You call him profligate, and he never embarrasses himself to the point of not being able to open the pot. In the blink of an eye, it was already evening, and Feng Bu Jue hung a bowl of clear soup on the stomach, even if it was solved for dinner. Wang Xiji called over, saying that he had logged into the game, had just completed the beginner's tutorial, was scared half to death, was in a cold sweat, and came offline to make a call, just to calm his emotions. Feng Bu Jue said in his heart, "Lousy really envies you. I haven't experienced what cold sweat is for months." The two exchanged a few words, informed each other of their nicknames in the game, and were ready to go online. Welcome the majority of book lovers to come and read. The latest, fastest, most popular serialized works are all original. Chapter 005. Feng Bu Jue lay down in the game cabin, still logged into the game in non-sleep mode. Non-sleep mode and sleep mode are logged into different servers, and the two modes cannot communicate with each other. After coming to the landing space, click on the selected game. This time no prompt pops up, the screen only shows optional game menus, and more game introduction. If the player has not read on the website, you can also browse in this space, which can actually save twice the time. Feng Enju searched for Wang Xiji's nickname, added it as a friend, and then sent an invitation to form a team. After Wang Xiji joined the team, the list of teams popped up on the display screen next to Feng Bu Jue, showing the nicknames and levels of the two people in the team. Crazy, Level 2 Psi, Level 1, please select the game mode in which the party wants to join. 3 options appear on the screen: single-player training mode, multiplayer training mode, and single-player survival mode normal. Since the two of them are in a team, the mode that can only be played by the two solo players is a gray icon that cannot be selected. Brother Ju, we can only enter that multi-person training. Wang Xiji can already talk to Feng Bu Jue through the display screen at this moment, and in his landing space, he can also see the same information as this screen, but the operation right is in the hands of the captain. Well, let's go in and talk about it. Feng Bu Jue replied and clicked on the option. Please confirm that you have selected multiplayer training mode. Confirmed. Coordinating neural connections. Script generation loading starts. Please wait. The elevator that Feng Bu Jue was in began to move again, and it was also descending. At the same time, a subtitle appears directly in front of his eyes, accompanied by a system tone. You are about to enter the same script as another player, so be sure to understand the following before joining a multiplayer game for the first time. In non-confrontational mode, any attack on other players will be restricted by the system, and your intentions will not be translated into actual actions of the character. In modes or scenarios where players may be pitted against each other, any attacks on teammates will be limited by the system. Veiny speech that the system determines to be sensitive will be silenced, such as the names of politicians, swear words, animals, plants, and objects in a specific context. See intentional use of slow lip synchronization, gestures, words, drawing, etc. To verbally attack other players will be limited by the system, and the player's intention will not be translated into the character's actual actions. Regardless of gender, any behavior judged by the system to be sexual harassment, including the intention to carry out the intention to be carried out in the manner listed in Articles B and C for this purpose, will be restricted by the system. Repeated attempts will be forcibly disconnected, and the player's citizen ID will be permanently added to the system blacklist and become a higher priority monitoring object. Any act that is systematically judged to be discriminatory shall be dealt with in the same way as Article D. Players who violate Articles D and E several times will be permanently deleted from their accounts, and their citizen's ID will be suspended from using the company's products. And if the circumstances are serious, the behavior in the game will be recorded by the system and transferred to the Public Security Department for handling. Please consult the Network Public Security Law and its derivative regulations for details. It must be explained here that Feng Bu Jue lives in a parallel universe in 2055, and in the world he lives, sexual harassment and various crimes of discrimination against disability, race, and congenital diseases are quite strictly caught. The latter will not be sentenced, but the citizen ID of serious cases will be added to the blacklist of various industries and institutions. The former is properly punishable by sentence. Feng Bu Jue has been exposed to many games before, and neural connection games have also been played with helmets. Basically, you can see similar terms. As the light brain continues to upgrade, players can play less and less. It can be said that these two behaviors are stifled in the conception stage. Onboarding is complete and you are currently working in multiplayer training mode. In this mode, script description, tasks, and worldview are not provided. Completing this mode can only earn experience points, no skill points, no game currency. There are no playthrough rewards and no additional rewards for fear ratings. The game has started. After listening to the prompt, the elevator door opened, and almost at the same time, a rather oozing strange voice sounded in his ears, this time a man's voice with a sharp voice. "Welcome to Thrillerland." After speaking, he let out a horrifying sneer. The scene outside the elevator door is another corridor, but this one looks quite spacious. The floor is tiled, both walls are whitewashed, and there are 3 doors on one side, all of which are closed at the moment. The lighting on the ceiling is working properly and there is plenty of light. The smell of disinfectant water filled the air, and with this architectural pattern, it looked like a hospital. Feng Bu Jue immediately walked out of the elevator, and then the elevator door behind him closed, and then the image of the elevator gradually distorted and disappeared, and finally turned into a wall. Turning his head, he saw another elevator door behind him, parallel to the one he had just walked out. Feng Bu Jue walked to the door, looked in, and heard, a scream. "Are you sick?" Feng asked unconsciously. Wang sighed and gasped. "As soon as I made up my mind to go out, your head suddenly stuck out, startling me. Can I ask, just now that you were startled by me, how much is the shock worth?" Feng Bu Jue was indeed curious. When Wang sighed and went to look at the menu, his action seemed to Feng Bu Jue, but the gaze of his eyes did not know where to move, and after a few seconds it resumed again. "I've calmed down now, and the scare value is floating around 3. Wang sighed and replied, "But I don't know how high it was just now." "Well, according to the level of fear, it will increase instantly, and then come down again, right?" Feng Bu muttered. "By the way, what color is the shock value displayed in the energy tank?" Bright red." "Oh, so it is. Brother Ju, does your disease always keep the shock value at 0? Wang Siji certainly knew about Feng Bu Jue's condition, but he was a newly graduated intern doctor, and naturally he couldn't do anything about this disease. It is precisely because he is a medical student that he will understand that Feng Bu Jue this disease may really depend on luck. Good luck may be fine for 30 years, bad luck, it is not surprising that it will be finished in 3 minutes. "Yes," Feng Bu Jue replied calmly. "Then I depend on you, and you have to cover me in any situation." Wang sighed. Feng Bu Jue did not reply to this, but just said, "The preparation time before the script starts is only 3 minutes, and if you don't come out, you will be forced out of the elevator by the system." When Wang sighed and heard this, he quickly walked out. The elevator had not completely disappeared, so Feng Bu Jue took out a stone from his bag and handed it to Wang Siji. "Take it, lead the way in front of your head." Wang Siji took the stone, and after reading the attributes, the corners of his mouth twitched. "Brother Ju, even if you pick this up and use it in the beginner's tutorial, you won't be reluctant to throw it away and bring it back to the landing space." "You're jealous," Feng unconsciously replied shamelessly. Without saying a word, Wang Sai threw the stone casually on the ground, and pulled out a fruit knife about 5 inches long from his bag. "My attribute is better. Why do you have equipment?" shouted Feng Bu Jue, who sighed on the phone before that the fear rating of his beginner's tutorial was terrifying, and according to the instructions on the official website, there was no additional reward for this level. "I picked it up in the script." Wang sighed. Feng Bu Jue said, "Show me first." Wang sighed and shrugged and handed the knife over. Name, fruit knife type, weapon quality, dilapidated attack, weak attribute, none special effects, none. Can you bring out the script? Yes. Note, at least this thing has a blade. Feng Bu Jue returned the knife to Wang Siji, and said sadly, "Character, all the things I can pick up in that script can't be taken out. Then your stone is additional rewards drawn after settlement." Feng Bu Jue said, "I'm afraid." Lead the way." Wang sighed helplessly, holding the knife and walking ahead. This began to play the game. He was a little stunned in his heart. He is an ordinary person, no matter how bold the average person claims to be in front of people. When playing horror games, there is no one who is not afraid. Fear is a very normal reaction. There was a corner 20 meters in front of them, and there were 3 doors on this distance, all on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side was a wall. The wall was empty, and there was not a single doctor information, or even health encyclopedia that would be posted in ordinary hospitals. The two had just walked out of 5 or 6 meters, and before they passed the doorway of the first door, they suddenly heard a strange laugh, like a little girl, and then on the white wall on their left, countless bloody handprints instantly appeared, almost covering the entire wall. Meantime, both of them saw a dark shadow flash in the distance and hid around the corner. Welcome the majority of book lovers to come and read. The latest, fastest, most popular serialized works are all original. Chapter 006 Juju brother, just now, Wang stammered with a sigh, and the shock value soared again. Due to the accumulation of fear, even if he calmed down after a few seconds, the shock value did not return to the lowest area, but stayed at about 15. Feng Bu Jue's face was expressionless, and his tone was calm and steady. According to my reasoning, now we have 2 choices. What is it? Wang sighed, and now he could say 2 words into 4 words. First, you take this knife, rush over, and after turning the corner, you can slash at whatever you encounter. Feng Bu Jue replied, I'm covering you from behind. I'll choose the second one. Wang Xiji's answer was fluent at once, and he hadn't even heard what the second option was. Actually, I'm more inclined to the second option. Feng Bu Jue said and walked in front of Wang Xi, stood in front of the first door on the right without nervousness, and turned the doorknob. Everyone knows in any horror game, the door is a scary hurdle. No one knows what will come into view after opening the door, and there is a classic malicious design such as opening the door to kill. It can be said that the moment the door is opened, the danger is the same as chasing to that corner. At such a moment, Yaqing will carefully stretch out his arm to push open the door, lower his body, make his body as far away from the door as possible, and be ready to escape at any time. But Feng Bu Jue's action at this moment is simply like rushing straight to the toilet cubicle under the drive of a stool. He walked forward quickly, leaned forward with his upper body, pushed the door and entered. There was no light in the room, and the light from the corridor shone through the doorway, and the scene inside the room was terrifying. This is a 10 square meter ward, with overturned cabinets in the corners and garbage cans in the corners. There was a lot of debris scattered on the ground, but most of it looked like useless garbage, such as rag strips, waste paper balls, broken flower pots, some stained sterilized cotton, broken glass medicine bottles, etc. The bed sheets were torn apart, and the whole room smelled of blood, and almost everywhere was illuminated by light. There was no blood. Training mode becomes invisible when the player reaches level 5, and obviously this mode is designed for beginners and allows players to move up to level 5 more securely. Feng Bu Jue said as he came to the cabinet, turned it around, and rummaged through the remaining things inside. Those high-level players are estimated to only play the training mode once at most after the beginner tutorial, or just stop playing and go straight to single-player survival mode. Because such players must have read the relevant game instructions beforehand, they know that the benefits of playing this experience-only mode must be far worse than the official survival mode. Feng Bu Jue found an unpacked syringe from the cabinet. He glanced at the attributes and put it into the bag. From the perspective of rewards, the training mode is worse than the beginner tutorial, so I think that its completion difficulty is basically similar to the tutorial. As long as the player is not scared to drop the line, even if he does not solve the puzzle, he can also pass the level. At this time, he actually leaned down and came closer to sniff what the broken medicine smelled like. In fact, we can now explore without entering these doors, just chase the black shadow and continue the game. I thought it would take a maximum of 20 minutes and a few battles with a high probability of losing survival points to get the script done. Then you still come in, Wang sighed. I said, there are 2 options, you don't listen to yourself and choose the second one. Feng Anju unfolded the paper balls on the ground one by one, took them to the light source and watched them one by one. The second is to solve puzzles. Hey, didn't you just say that? I said that you can clear the level without solving the puzzle, but I didn't say that there is no mystery to solve. Feng Bu Jue continued, it's just that even if we solve the puzzle, we won't get skill points. He continued to look at the papers, his expression unchanged, but solving puzzles has at least one advantage, that is, it can reduce the difficulty of completing the level. Simply put, the work that will require physical strength is shared by the intellect first, he said, picking out a piece of paper, handed it to Wang and sighed, look at what this situation is. This is Wang sighed and took the paper, looked at it for a few seconds and asked, medical records, name, medical records of unknown persons, genre, plot-related quality, normal function, unknown. Can you bring out the script? No note. There are many places on this piece of paper that are obscured by blood. This is your business, Feng Bu Jue said, and raised the remaining stack of papers in his hand. This pile is for me to see. Wang Xiji only glanced at it and felt his scalp tingle. The pile that Feng Bu Jue was holding in his hand, the top one had a strange face drawn. The two came to the brightly lit corridor and watched for about 3 or 4 minutes. Wang sighed and looked very carefully, because there were many places in the medical record that were covered by blood, and he had to guess while looking. Feng Bu Jue is walking around and watching the flowers, quickly sweeping one after another. He is a reading addict, he reads everything quickly, and his memory, comprehension, and reasoning are very efficient, plus the content on these papers does not scare him, so in his eyes, this is similar to reading the illustrations of ordinary magazines. Have you finished reading it? Feng Bu Jue asked the question first. Wang Xiji's gaze was still on the medical record. He thought about it and replied, "This is a man, 12 years old is still a child." Feng Bu Jue touched his chin. "Oh, young pioneers. No one knows how his mind works well. Leukemia. I have been hospitalized for a long time." But Wang sighed and put down the medical records. Judging from the medical records, the days are numbered. He raised his head, and his eyes moved to the end of the corridor. "It's now a ghost," Feng Bu Jue said. "Not necessarily, there are 3 doors here. We only know that the first one may be the ward of the boy on this medical record, but we can't be sure if the shadow we saw just now is him." He handed the stack of papers in his hand to Wang Xiji. "You don't need to look closely, just look at the attributes." After a second pause, he added, "There are 6 different faces drawn on these papers, and each paper has a number in the corner. Name, face, sketch, 6 genre, plot-related quality, normal function, unknown. Can you bring out the script? No note. These paintings are clearly by the same person. The item can be split or stacked and treated as one item when stacked." "I'm getting more and more confused," Wang sighed. Feng Bu Jue nodded. "It's normal, the clues to solve the puzzle are obviously not enough." Saying that, he walked to the second room. "In addition, I have another hypothesis, and this assumption is also the reason why I hope to clear the level after solving the puzzle." He pushed open the second door and said at the same time, "I believe that at least one piece of formal equipment can be found in these 3 wards." Chapter 007. The scene in the second room is even more eerie than the first, for walls, floors, ceilings, all painted with human faces. The room is empty, but the faces on the wall are dense. And on the ground in the middle of this empty room, there is a safe placed alone. The puzzle is given a little clear. Feng Bu Jue walked straight to the insurance forward, squatted down and looked at it carefully. "Well, after all, it is a training mode, and it may take into account the factors that players cannot think calmly in fear." His words seemed to mean too little difficulty. Wang Xiji also followed in. At this moment he only felt that the faces painted on these walls were lifelike, and he couldn't even find any 2 similarities, as if there were really hundreds of pairs of eyes staring at him in this room, which was creepy. "Brother Ju, let's move the box out and study how to do it," Wang sighed. 3 minutes at most. Feng Bu Jue quickly stood up again, took out the 6 face sketches, held them up in front of him, and began to look at the faces on the wall. "Look closer at the safe, there will be a system prompt. Let me enter the 6-digit numeric password to open." His gaze soon stopped. "Well, there." He walked to a wall and tilted his head to the left. "There are a lot of faces drawn in this room, just to disturb the player's vision." He pointed to the wall. "Look, 6 faces in a row, arranged diagonally in a line, and they are exactly the 6 drawn on the sketch, and they look the same." He compared the terrifying faces that were difficult to see one by one, from left to right, from top to bottom, in the order of the 6 faces on the wall, with the numbers on the corner of the sketch paper, and whispered, 4, 1, 6, 3, 5, 2. Feng Bu Jue returned to the safe and began to enter the password. If you only open the door and take a cursory look when exploring the first room, and do not search carefully, you will not find a clue to the sketch. Then when opening the second room, it is impossible to unlock the password for the safe. He glanced back at the 6 faces. Actually, the answer is in the area where the door is most light, but there is no hint of sketching. Even if you know the 6-digit password in this room, you can't get these numbers. At this time, the safe was really opened, and there were 2 things inside, a key and a card. Miscalated. Feng Bu Jue said immediately after reading the attributes of these two things. What's wrong? Wang Xiji seemed to be infected by his calmness, and at this time he had calmed down a lot, and the fright value returned to 3. The key should be used soon, but this one, Feng Bu Jue handed the card to Wang Xiji. Name, Explosive God Fist Skill Card Attribute, Active Skill, disappears after 2 uses skill category, Fighting Effect, explodes when hitting the target, causing fire attribute damage cost, Stamina 50 Learning Requirements, Combat Specialization F. Note, Bo, I thought the reward would be equipped, but it turned out to be a skill. Feng Bu Jue said. Well, let's not talk about equipment or skills, Brother Ju. How do you know that there will be a reward? Wang Sai asked. It's obviously not, although this mode does not give any additional rewards other than experience points, but in order to ensure gameplay, the script still provides players with 2 ways to clear the level. Feng Bu Jue explained, we are now taking the puzzle route, not violent killing. He took the key in his hand and walked out of the second room with Wang Sai. Players who take the non-puzzle route, as long as they overcome their fears, calmly respond to the enemy, and fight efficiently, they can gain a specialization level, and as the character level increases, combat skills and methods increase, they can also gain skill points in battle. Our way of playing is more focused on improving the overall game efficiency, rather than simply improving the combat efficiency. By solving puzzles, you can reduce the difficulty of clearing the level, reduce the proportion of battles, and grasp the situation of the script more. But people who play in this way will lag behind in the level of specialization, and the system will naturally compensate in other aspects. In general, it should be more skill value. Wang sighed and understood when he heard this, and then his words, but the training mode has no skill value to take, so if the player chooses to solve the puzzle, he will directly obtain items in the script as a kind of compensation. Correct. Feng Bu Jue tried the door of the third room. As he expected, the door was locked. He immediately used the key in his hand to open. Sure enough, the key disappeared after the door opened. The third room was clean, and against the wall, there was a desk with a notebook on it. By the way, how many of your specialization levels have opened? Feng Bu Jue asked as he picked up his notebook. My martial arts and GM are F. What about you? I only turned on GM. Feng Bu Jue had opened his notebook and looked up. Under what circumstances did your martial arts expertise start? I was attacked by a couple of monkey-like things in the tutorial, and after killing them, the system prompted me to have an F-level martial arts specialty. Wang Xiji recalled. However, the general specialization level only appeared after the end of the tutorial. So that's the case, it seems that we have to find an opportunity to open up all 6 specialties first. Feng Bu Jue muttered. He then turned back to Wang Xiji and said, when you get the skill bar in your menu also appears. Since you meet the conditions, you can quickly install the skill card just now. Maybe it will be useful in a while. Just now, Feng Bu Jue also picked up the skill card for the first time, and when he watched the attribute, the system prompted him that the skill bar was open. The skill slots of characters in Thriller Land have a total of 12 tiles, and skills can only be adjusted before the beginning of the script. That is, no matter how many skills the character has in the future, when entering a script, up to 12 are equipped. Moreover, skill cards that have been equipped, whether they have been used or not, will be bound to the character and can no longer be traded. Therefore, if the player obtains a skill card and wants to sell it, he must put it in his bag, and must not equip it into the skill slot. Once equipped, the entity of the card will disappear, and the skill will be converted into a set of data in the player's menu. There is also a setting that when skill cards are used as items, they can only bring out the script, but cannot be brought in. This is to prevent someone from carrying a bunch of spare cards into the bag under the premise of equipping 12 skills. However, there are a few exceptions, such as when the player picks up a new skill card in the script, also has the conditions to learn, and his skill slots are full. At this point, you can replace an equipped skill with a newly picked card, but the replaced skill needs to return to the landing space to be re-equipped. There are also some special skill cards, which themselves exist in the form of items, such as stone tablets and boxes, which can also be carried in and out of the script. Appeared, but how can this skill disappear after using it twice? Wang sighed. Asking this kind of question is obviously a performance without reading the game description. Feng Bu Jue replied while flipping through the notebook in his hand with relish. The skill card attribute is that the key skill is active and passive. The active one has permanent mastery, limited time possession. and consumption according to the number of times these 3 card types, passive only permanent mastery and limited time possession too. He thought for a few seconds. Your 1 belongs to the number of times consumed, and when it is used up twice, the skill will be gone. It's quite a pit feeling, Wang Xiji said so, but he also loaded the skills according to Feng Bu Jue's words. No, that's reasonable. Feng Bu Jue said, with your current physical strength, you can only punch 2 punches in a row when you are full. If you use it when you have the opportunity and conditions, at least this script will never require you to throw a 3rd punch, and maybe even a punch at all. He paused. Besides, if it is a permanent version or a limited time version, I am afraid that the learning conditions and usage consumption will not be so low, and it is likely to require a higher level of martial arts specialization and more physical consumption. Otherwise, the skill is too cheap, like a level 50 shooting specialist player casually get a permanent boxing to install. If that skill fighting F can be used, only consume 50 health points, then he can use it with 100 bullets. How can this work? Wang sighed and felt that it made sense. Well, this is also true. If you give me a skill that can be learned by specializing in martial arts now, but the physical consumption is 101, then it means that there is a problem with the design of this game. Oh, I also have to remind you that the success rate of the use of the department's active skills is only 20, so it depends on the face of the low-level characters who get the skills. Feng Bu Jue said, isn't this still a pit, Daddy? So I was just looking forward to finding equipment before I went to the official website to see it. The internal test in the morning only started, and the afternoon raters came out. And several guys on the forum who have reached more than a dozen levels said that the biggest improvement for the character in this game at a low level is equipment, but low-level equipment above the level of fine is extremely rare. Feng Bu Jue focused on 2 things, chatting, and had almost finished reading the note. It is estimated that because this game can quickly transition to level 10 or above, and at a low level, if the player has good equipment to support the scene, he can violently clear the level more efficiently without solving puzzles, so the game hardly provides that kind of powerful low-level equipment. He closed his notebook. Also, after level 10, low-level sophisticated equipment has become a pity to abandon tastelessly, and now the exchange is not open, and it will only occupy the bags. Feng Bu Jue said as he spoke, and suddenly said, miscalculated, what's wrong? Wang sighed nervously, picked up the fruit knife and looked back at the corridor at the door, but except for the bloody handprint on the wall opposite the corridor, he didn't see anything new. Speaking of things like opening boxes in the future, I should let you open them, I just need to tell you the password or method. Feng Bu Jue said. Che, I thought you were going to say something. Wang sighed, character and everything is a floating cloud. It's just a probability. Will you definitely open garbage? I really want to go outside the hallway and pick up a rock and knock you to death. Well, I was wrong. Feng Bu Jue put the notebook in his bag and said, let's go. I'll tell you what kind of story this script is.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to our channel for more captivating illustrated romance audiobooks. Don't miss out on our latest releases and be part of our growing community. Hit that subscribe button and embark on an enchanting journey with us.